President Donald Trump says the U.S. has captured Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro and his wife after a large-scale military operation in the country. Multiple explosions rocked the capital Caracas earlier today. Reuters News says witnesses report at least 7 loud blasts near Fort Tiuna, which houses the headquarters of Venezuela's defense ministry. Social media footage also shows low-flying aircraft during the explosions, which took place at about 2 a.m. local time. Mary Mina reports for CNA from Caracas.
So far, the only government official that has addressed the situation is Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez, who is calling for a proof of life of the leader of Venezuela. The Ministry of Defense also said there will be an extensive military deployment across Venezuela, and most citizens have decided to remain in their homes.
And for more, Nick Harper reports for CNN, and he joins us live from Washington, D.C. Nick, thank you for joining us. Now, what's likely to happen to Mr. Maduro now that he's in U.S. custody?
Well, Koping, we've been hearing from the U.S. Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. He apparently held a phone call with a Trump ally, Senator Mike Lee of Utah. And in that phone call, Marco Rubio told the senator that Nicolas Maduro would be heading now to the United States to face criminal charges. We are likely to get more information from Donald Trump when he holds his press conference in about 4 hours' time from now. But remember, back in March 2020, during Donald Trump's first time in the White House, Nicolas Maduro was amongst 15 people who were charged in absentia by the United States with a whole variety of different charges, including narco-terrorism, corruption, and drug trafficking. It is likely that Nicolas Maduro, if, as the Secretary of State says, is heading here to the US, it is likely that he would end up in a US court to face those charges, including that one of drug trafficking.
Now, Nick, what has been some international reactions to the capture of Mr. Maduro?
Well, there's certainly been plenty of reaction, and what we've seen is a very clear divide between countries loyal to Venezuela and those who are more loyal to the United States. In terms of regional reaction, we've heard from Colombia's president. Colombia is a neighbor of Venezuela, neighboring countries. Colombia's president has called for an urgent UN Security Council meeting, very much pushing back against what he called illegal action by the United States. Russia's foreign ministry has just commented in the last few minutes saying that they are extremely concerned by what they call the US's aggressive actions. They also say that it constitutes an unacceptable violation of the sovereignty of an independent state. Cuba and Iran have also come out in support of Venezuela, Cuba saying that the US brutally assaulted a zone of peace. But in terms of US allies, we have seen some support, most notably from the European Union, the representative for foreign affairs, coming out in support because, like the United States, the EU did not recognise Nicolas Maduro as a legitimate government. There were suggestions of vote rigging in the last couple of elections so Nicolas Maduro could stay in power. However, it's important to note that the EU in that statement did call for restraint, essentially urging the US to step back, not to carry out further military action. And one other country who's offered to mediate in all of this, Spain, has come forward, putting up their hand to try and get in the middle to negotiate what comes next, because that's a huge question. What is the US endgame beyond what we've already seen, and what could potentially now happen in Venezuela?
Many thanks for that update. Nick Harper there reporting for CNA from Washington, D.C. Nicolas Maduro assumed the role of acting Venezuelan president in 2013, immediately after the death of socialist leader Hugo Chavez. Shortly after, he narrowly won a special presidential election and has ruled the country since. A former bus driver and union organizer, Mr. Maduro rose through the ranks, having served as foreign minister and vice president. His time in office has been dominated by a severe economic crisis marked by hyperinflation, shortages of food and medicine, as well as the collapse of oil production. Now, these events triggered the mass migration of millions of Venezuelans. Mr. Maduro's re-elections have been widely disputed by opposition parties and international observers who accuse his government of authoritarian rule and human rights abuses. His administration denies the allegations. While supported by allies including Russia and China, many Western nations do not recognize Mr. Maduro's mandate, leaving Venezuela deeply divided at home and isolated abroad. And for more, Chetan Nestorovich joins us live. He's a professor of geopolitics at ESSEC Business School. Professor, thank you for joining us. Now, how unprecedented is the capture of a foreign leader by U.S. forces? And what risks does this set in terms of international law and global norms?
Good evening. So it was a huge surprise to watch and also to hear about the capture of President Maduro, but it is not completely unprecedented because many years back, the President Noriega has also been captured by the United States and he spent many years in prison. I presume that they will use absolutely the same approach, that is by looking for the people who are responsible for the narco traffic, and they have identified President Maduro as one of the main people who are involved in the narco traffic to the United States. They will bring him to the United States, probably they will judge him, and maybe he will serve in prison in the United States. This is how I see that it is going to unfold.
Now, what could be the immediate impact on the wider region?
So the immediate impact is not so strong because, of course, President Maduro is an icon for the left-wing governments, but also for the left-wing parties worldwide. But on the other side, the principle of realism will prevail, that no one will go against the United States. And since, as you have mentioned, he is also lacking some legitimacy within the country itself, they will not create many problems for the U.S. so far if everything stays at the same level. If there is a full-scale invasion or something else, of course, the situation will be different. But if it stays only with the capture of President Maduro, I don't think that in the region there would be big problems for that.
Now, with Mr. Maduro's fate unknown, how do you expect things to unfold inside Venezuela?
So that's a big uncertainty that we have, because it is amazing how you are sending the Delta Force in one country and you are capturing the president of the country without the army opposing to this, or maybe some parts of the army were cooperating with the United States. So we have to see how the army on one side will react, but you also have to see how the population will react to this. So for the moment, it is uncertain. We have to wait for a few hours in order to see what will happen there. But probably when we look at the situation concerning the army, the situation is not as clear as it stands.
Now, the White House says this was a large-scale strike involving U.S. law enforcement and military assets. Does this effectively put America at war with Venezuela?
I don't think that it is putting America at war, because according to them, they will label this as an action against the narco traffics. And we didn't see the United States willing to have a regime change in Venezuela. So this is another uncertainty. How are you looking for non-regime change if you are capturing and exfiltrating the president of the country? But on the paper, the United States doesn't want to have a regime change, so maybe the vice president will take power, or maybe we can also imagine that there would be a deal with Maduro, and maybe to some extent he can also come back to Venezuela. But this is highly improbable.
Now, Mr. Trump has accused Mr. Maduro of running a narco-terrorist state, but the leader says Washington wants to control Venezuela's oil reserves. What does the U.S. want to achieve here?
So the Venezuelan oil reserves are the biggest in the world. So automatically we cannot dismiss the idea that the United States would like to have some hands, to put some hands on these reserves. For the moment, this is not what is proposed. But we cannot evacuate this idea. And if it is not directly the United States, at least for some American oil companies, coming back to Venezuela is certainly an idea that they would like to entertain.
Now, what legal authority would the U.S. president need to capture a sitting foreign head of state? And what questions does this raise about congressional approval?
So, in fact, during the first presidency of the United States, a federal tribunal from New York, from Manhattan, has already accused and also convicted Nicolas Maduro for cooperating with the narco traffics. And so previously, Donald Trump has also put a price on his head who can bring him back to the United States. So I think that they will use this judiciary excuse or a pretext in order to bring Nicolas Maduro back to the United States. And this will be, let's say, the legal justification for that.
Well, many thanks for sharing your insights. You've been listening to Chairman Nestorovic in Singapore, Professor of Geopolitics from ASEC Business School in Asia Pacific. Thank you.